In our last class, we studied about what is meant by hysteresis, hysteresis cycle, hysteresis loop and hysteresis loss. So then what is meant by hysteresis cycle? Suppose if a ferromagnetic bar like iron is kept in a varying magnetic field intensity. What is H here? H is known as magnetic field intensity or simply magnetic intensity. Okay. So if I keep this bar in this varying, that means the magnitude of H should keep varying. In such a field, if an iron bar is kept, then after some time what happens? It gets magnetized. If we magnetize this in one direction, then we can demagnetize this by applying the same magnetic field intensity, by making use of same magnetic field intensity in the opposite direction. What does it mean? Suppose if a iron bar is magnetized by making use of positive H, that means magnetic intensity in the positive direction, then it is demagnetized. It is demagnetized. How it is demagnetized? By applying negative H. Okay. Then negative H means direction of H in the opposite direction. That's all. Again in the same negative H, it is remagnetized. Remagnetized by making use of same negative field. That means negative magnetic intensity. Then again it is demagnetized. Demagnetized by making use of positive H. Once again finally it is remagnetized by making use of same positive H. Magnetized in the positive direction, demagnetized in the negative direction, again it is remagnetized in the same negative direction, and again it is demagnetized by applying the field in the positive direction. In the same positive field direction, it is once again remagnetized. So if we follow this process, then this is nothing but hysteresis cycle. Okay. So the process of subjecting a magnetic material for magnetization and demagnetization by making use of varying magnetic field intensity is nothing but hysteresis cycle. So that is what we have written here. Process of magnetizing and demagnetizing. Magnetizing and demagnetizing means right from here to there. So during that process, which material should be magnetized and demagnetized? Ferromagnetic material. So by subjecting it to varying magnetic field intensity H is called hysteresis cycle. Then throughout the process of hysteresis cycle, it is found that the magnetic induction or magnetic field, what is this be? Magnetic induction or magnetic field or magnetic field. Okay. So this always remain behind when compared to H. That means value of B lags behind H. What does it mean? Even though we continue to increase H, B is not going to increase. B remains to be saturated. So if H is increased continuously, B also increases up to a certain stage. Then after certain stage, B does not increase even though H increases. That is the meaning of lagging of B behind H. And that lagging of B behind H is known as hysteresis cycle. It is known as hysteresis. Then suppose during the process of magnetization and demagnetization, if some energy is lost, what is that energy we make use? We make use of electric energy because the material is kept inside a solenoid and current is passed through the solenoid. So therefore, the electric energy that is lost during the process of hysteresis cycle in the form of heat which cannot be recovered back is known as hysteresis loss. See, we have written amount of energy lost per unit volume. What does it mean per unit volume? Suppose if you consider a unit volume size material, I imagine one cube like this. So this is nothing but a cube of unit volume. Okay, so 1 meter cube. So 1 meter cube volume. In every cycle means right from year to year. In every cycle, to magnetize and demagnetize during the entire process of hysteresis cycle, whatever amount of energy that is lost, that is nothing but the hysteresis loss, and it appears in the form of heat. So this also we studied. Then now coming to the uses or the significance or the application of hysteresis loop. What is meant by hysteresis loop? A closed loop. Look here. A, B, C, D, E, F, back to what? Back to this point, which is nothing but A. A closed loop. A, B, C, D, E, F, A, which is obtained by plotting magnetic field or magnetic induction against magnetic field intensity during the hysteresis cycle. So during the hysteresis cycle is known as hysteresis loop. Okay, what is the use of studying this hysteresis cycle or hysteresis loop? Let us now try to understand its significance one by one. First of all, look here. I consider significance or importance of hysteresis loop. Okay. First one. See, the area of the hysteresis loop gives the hysteresis loss. That means how much energy should be spent to magnetize and demagnetize this one unit volume material. 1 meter cube material should be magnetized and demagnetized during the process of hysteresis cycle as per this order. So during this process, what amount of energy is lost? That can be found out mathematically by making use of the hysteresis loop. How means? By finding out its area. Of course, there is no appropriate formula to find the area of this hysteresis loop. So we follow one simple technique. What is that means? We divide the entire hysteresis loop into small rectangular areas like this. Okay, then we find the area of each rectangle and we add the area of all the rectangles right from this end to this end. So this is one of the method we follow. So divide this into number of small equal rectangles and find out the area of each rectangle and sum it up. So that gives the hysteresis loss. That is one of the importance. So area of hysteresis loop gives the hysteresis loss. Okay, so this is one point. Then let us consider now one more aspect with respect to this hysteresis loop. What is that? Suppose if I find the slope of this hysteresis loop, how do you find this slope? Look here, on this hysteresis loop, you choose 2 points. You choose any 2 points such that the region of the loop between these 2 points must be straight, or else even by drawing one tangent also we can find the slope. Now I have chosen 2 points on this hysteresis loop. With respect to these 2 points, I construct one triangle like this, triangle of any size. Let us call this as A, B, C. What is AB? AB is Y. What is BC? BC is nothing but X. So remember, AB is equal to Y and BC equal to X. Now, how to find the slope of this hysteresis loop? See, the slope of the hysteresis loop can be determined by making use of slope formula. What is that slope formula? Look here. slope is given by slope m is equal to y by x. Y means AB, x means BC. Find out the length AB. This length is nothing but equal to, we take that as equal to B, capital B. Already we have used here B. So let us call this as P, Q, and this point as R. So we shall change this so that there should not be any confusion. So PQ is equal to Y and RQ equal to X. PQ divided by RQ. So PQ is equal to, what is the value of PQ? This length. This length always gives what? The value of magnetic induction B divided by RQ, base of the triangle, which is equal to X. That gives nothing but the magnetic field intensity H. This value is nothing but H, because along x-axis what is taken? H. So this is along x-axis and this line PQ is along y-axis, which is nothing but B. So B by H means what? B by H is nothing but permeability. So permeability is nothing but ratio of magnetic induction to magnetic field intensity. We already studied about this. So therefore here secondly what we can say means the slope of hysteresis loop gives the permeability mu of the material used. Permeability of the material. Okay. So which material we have used here? Iron. One of the ferromagnetic material like iron, cobalt, nickel, whatever it may be. Then thirdly, what is that we can find out from this hysteresis loop means, see, we can find the material's coercivity and retentivity. Already we have determined the permeability of the material. Similarly, we can determine the coercivity and retentivity. Now let us take the two hysteresis loop. This is the hysteresis loop obtained by magnetizing iron bar, and this is the hysteresis loop obtained by magnetizing the steel bar. So instead of keeping iron inside the solenoid, if I keep steel inside the solenoid and if I subject that to hysteresis cycle, then we get finally the hysteresis loop like this. Okay. Now from this, what is that we find here? In case of this iron, it is found that the coercivity is low. O, let us call this as A, B, this point as C, this is B, this is A, this is C, this is D, and this is E, and this is F. Okay. OC, look here OC equal to OF, OC equal to OF, understand? And this is nothing but what? This is nothing but coercivity. Coercivity means it is the property of the material to lose its magnetization. That means it is the property of the material to lose its magnetic field B completely 0. That means losing means becoming B becoming equal to 0. So that property of the material is nothing but coercivity, but for that we apply negative field. So if the specimen is magnetized in the positive field, it is demagnetized by making use of negative field. So what is the amount of field which is to be applied? Coercive field, that can be found out from what? From this length. OC equal to OF is nothing but coercive field, and the property of the material is known as coercivity. So that can be found out, and here it is found that the coercivity of iron is less than the coercivity of steel. Look here. So this value is large. Let us write this once again as A, B, C, D, E, F. So it is found that now OC equal to OF, which is nothing but once again coercivity, and this is for steel. So from these two figures it is found that the coercivity of iron is less than the coercivity of steel. So that is why, since your coercivity is less, what happen means the iron loses its magnetism quickly when compared to steel. Steel can retain its magnetism for long time when compared to iron. So this is what we can find out from the hysteresis loop. Not only that, you just look into this. What is this OB? OB is nothing but the retentivity. Retentivity means amount of magnetization retained by the material even if H is made as equal to 0. When we remove the magnetic field intensity, that means if we remove the magnetic field, when H becomes equal to 0, the specimen is not going to demagnetize completely, it retains some amount of magnetism, that is nothing but retentivity. It is found that retentivity is large for iron when compared to what? When compared to steel. See, this is large, it is narrow, it is very narrow, so it is broad. So therefore this is small when compared to this. So this clearly shows that iron can be magnetized strongly than steel. See the difference, low retentivity, high retentivity, okay, high retentivity but low coercivity. For this, low retentivity, high coercivity. Okay, so this is how the different amount of retentivity and different amount of coercivity for different material can also be determined by studying the hysteresis cycle or the hysteresis loop. So let us write this. By studying hysteresis loop or hysteresis cycle, properties like permeability mu, okay, then retentivity, coercivity and also hysteresis loss, all these can be determined. And look into these two hysteresis loop. The area of the hysteresis loop obtained for steel is very large when compared to the area of the hysteresis loop obtained for iron. So this area is less, this area is large, and it is found, and it is very evident that the hysteresis loss is very large for steel when compared to iron. What is the use of studying all these terminology? Means the retentivity, coercivity, hysteresis loss and as well as permeability. So these properties of the magnetic material will help us to select the materials which are suitable for the manufacturing of temporary magnets, permanent magnets, core of the transformer, core of the armature of the generator and also the core of the electric motor. So to select these materials, these properties will play an important role, and the magnitude of all these can be determined by studying the hysteresis loop. So that is why hysteresis loop is said to have its own significance, because we have to select the material whether iron is suitable for temporary magnet or steel is suitable. How do we come to know? We come to know only by means of hysteresis loop. Then which material is suitable? So whether steel is suitable or soft iron is suitable to make the core of the transformer armature, all these things can be found out only by making use of hysteresis loop. Now let us study about what are permanent magnets and also temporary magnets. Not only that, let us also study the uses of the permanent magnets and as well as temporary magnets. Permanent magnets. See, permanent magnets are the ferromagnetic materials which retains their property for a long time. If any ferromagnetic material retains its property for a long time, then we call that as permanent magnet. Retaining its property means what? Suppose if we prepare a magnet by making use of one ferromagnetic material, and if that magnet retains its magnetism without losing its magnetization, if it retains for a very long time at room temperature, then we call that as permanent magnet. So, ferromagnetic materials which retains their magnetism for long time at room temperature known as permanent magnets. Then what are temporary magnets then? Temporary magnets are nothing but metal core which behaves as magnet only as long as the current flows through a coil of wire wound around it. Let us write this first. Metal core which retains its metal core which behaves as magnet only as long as current flows over a coil of wire wound around it. Okay. Now, suppose if I consider a solenoid and if I keep one ferromagnetic bar and if I pass the current through the solenoid, so these are nothing but the turns of the solenoid. Okay. Now, if I pass the current through the solenoid, especially strong current if I pass, then after some time what happens means the whole ferromagnetic material like iron or cobalt or nickel or even it may be steel also. So, it behaves like a magnet with two poles. So, this is how now we can prepare the permanent magnet. Now, once it becomes a magnet, then it is capable of retaining its magnetic power or magnetization for a long time for room temperature. Even though if there are small changes or small fluctuations in the room temperature, then also the substance is able to retain its magnetization for a long time. That is why it is called as permanent. So, soon after stopping the current, it is not going to lose its magnetism. It retains the magnetism for a very long time. That is why it is called as permanent. Whereas, in case of temporary magnet, suppose if I consider one iron bar, say for example one iron rod, if I wind the coil of wire over it and now if I pass the current through this, now this iron bar behaves as a magnet only as long as the current flows through this coil. If the flow of current is stopped, then it is no longer a magnet. It behaves as ordinary metal rod. So, that is the difference between the permanent magnet and temporary magnet. So, metal core which behaves as magnet only as long as current flows through it, over a coil of wire wound over it. So, here we are keeping the material inside the solenoid. Here we are winding the coil of wire over the metal itself. You see that difference also. Here the metal bar is kept inside the solenoid and current is passed through the solenoid. This is the current which is flowing through the solenoid. Here we are not making use of solenoid. We wind the wire over the iron bar itself or over the metal bar itself. So that is why it behaves as a magnet only as long as current flows through it. So you must note the difference between these two. Then we can give too many examples for permanent magnets and as well as for temporary magnets. What are the examples? See, we can give the example like iron, okay, steel, okay, then alnico, ticonal, See, all these are nothing but alloys. Steel, alnico, ticonal, or this alloy means mixture of more than two or more than two metals. So if two or more than two metals mix up, we call that as alloy. So the permanent magnets are made up of, most of the permanent magnets are made up of alloy material. Then example for temporary magnet is nothing but soft iron. So here we use this as soft iron. That means the material that is used here is nothing but soft iron. So that's the example for soft iron. Then how already we know that how already the permanent magnets are prepared, temporary magnets are prepared. Permanent magnets are prepared by keeping the ferromagnetic metal inside a solenoid and by passing the strong current. Whereas temporary magnets are prepared by passing the current through a coil of wire wound over that iron bar. Okay, so that is how it is prepared. But there is one more method of preparing the permanent magnet. There are different methods, but let us consider one more method. What is that means? Suppose if I consider this as a ferromagnetic bar, which is not at all a magnet, it is only an iron. Now, if you stroke this by making use of powerful bar magnet, stroke means just rub like this over the surface of this iron bar. So if you stroke or if you rub this by making use of another strong bar magnet, then after some time this bar behaves like a magnet with how many poles? 2 poles. Suppose if this is nothing but iron bar. Okay, now what I do is simply I stroke like this from one end to another end by making use of one powerful bar magnet. So this is iron, this is bar magnet. So stroke it like this. Stroke it like this means rub it like this several number of times. So from one end to another end, so rub it for several number of times or for about few minutes. After some time, it is found that this iron bar also starts behaving like a magnet. So this is another method of preparing a permanent magnet. Whereas for temporary magnet, we follow this method. Then what are the essential characteristic feature of the permanent magnets and as well as temporary magnets? Characteristic feature means properties. Suppose if I look into the properties, this permanent magnet must have high permeability. If permeability is high, then the material can be magnetized very easily. So that is why it must have high permeability. Secondly, it must have high retentivity. If the material possesses high retentivity, that means if the material is able to retain its magnetism, then it means that it can be strongly magnetized. If it possesses high retentivity, it can be magnetized strongly. Whereas if it possesses high permeability, then very easily can be magnetized. Easily can be magnetized because of high permeability. Strongly can be magnetized because of high retentivity. Then it must have high coercivity. High coercivity, that means the substance should not lose its magnetism quickly. So it should retain its magnetism for a long time. So if it has high coercivity, then this material after becoming a magnet does not get affected to stray magnetic fields. Stray means external or unwanted magnetic fields, outside magnetic field. Outside magnetic field may be due to earth. If you once you prepare a permanent magnet and if you keep it in the laboratory for 2 long days, so it won't get affected because of earth's magnetism. because we know that Earth's magnetic field is very, very weak field. So the Earth magnetic field cannot affect the magnetism of a permanent magnet. So for this to happen, that material or that magnet should possess high coercivity, so that even though if temperature changes, the permanent magnet is not going to lose its magnetism quickly for the change of temperature. So that's the meaning of this. So these three should be there for the permanent magnet. Whereas for temporary magnet, what are the properties or characteristic feature in which the temporary magnet should possess? Means it must have, once again, high permeability, so that it can be magnetized quickly. Secondly, it must have low coercivity. If it possesses low coercivity, then it can be demagnetized quickly. That is why as soon as you stop current, so the material loses its magnetism and behaves as ordinary metal bar. So if it possesses low coercivity, then very quickly it can be demagnetized. So these are the two things in which a temporary magnet should possess. Then coming to the uses of the permanent magnet and as well as temporary magnets. See, when we take up uses of permanent magnets are used in the measuring devices, current measuring devices, voltage measuring devices. What are the current measuring devices and current detecting devices? Galvanometer. So used in galvanometers, okay, ammeter and voltmeter. So G for galvanometer, A for ammeter and V for voltmeter. So in the manufacturing of these, permanent magnets are very much required, very, very essential. Then not only that, the permanent magnets are also used in loudspeakers, electric generators. So in the manufacturing of generators also, magnetic poles are required to produce the current. So therefore permanent magnets are required. Similarly, the same permanent magnets are also required in small size, particularly in the laboratory. So in ordinary laboratory, we make use of magnets of very, very small size, whereas in high-tech laboratories or in very big laboratories, they may make use of the permanent magnets of very, very larger size or very big size. So also used in laboratory in small sizes. So these are the uses of the permanent magnets. Then coming to the uses of temporary magnets. See, temporary magnets are used in calling bells, relay circuits. These relay circuits are quite common in electronic devices. Relay circuits. Okay. Then these temporary magnets are also used in electromagnetic cranes, big electromagnetic cranes in big industries, just to shift the huge mass or huge load from one place to another place. They make use of electromagnetic cranes. So therefore they are used in electromagnetic cranes. So they are also used in the particle accelerators to produce strong magnetic field. So temporary magnets are also used in particle accelerators. So these are the applications of the temporary magnets. Now let us study the variation of magnetic susceptibility with temperature of different magnetic materials. So we know that there are three different types of magnetic materials: paramagnetic material, ferromagnetic material and diamagnetic material. How the susceptibility of this magnetic material varies if we increase its temperature. Let us see now one by one. First of all, in case of diamagnetic material, so diamagnetic material, it is found that susceptibility is independent of temperature. Susceptibility is independent of temperature. What does it mean? See, it means that, look here, it means that suppose if you consider a diamagnetic bar, this is a diamagnetic material, okay. So there are too many diamagnetic materials. So gold, silver, all this, gold, silver, copper, okay. So quartz, diamond, all these are diamagnetic materials. If you eat this diamagnetic material, then its susceptibility represented by chi, this does not change, it remains as it is. And we also know that susceptibility for diamagnetic material is low and negative, okay. Similarly now, if I consider the susceptibility of paramagnetic material, see, if we eat this, no change is noticed with respect to susceptibility, it remains as it is. Whatever low and negative value this diamagnetic material possesses as susceptibility, that value remains as it is. That is the meaning of independent of temperature. No effect on susceptibility by temperature. If you consider a paramagnetic material, in case of paramagnetic material, it is found that the susceptibility is inversely proportional to absolute temperature. So susceptibility of paramagnetic material is found to be inversely proportional to absolute temperature. So better write capital T, don't write small t. Small t refers to temperature in Celsius. So capital T generally it refers to temperature in Kelvin. What does it mean? Suppose if you consider a paramagnetic material and if we eat this paramagnetic material, too many, aluminum, chromium, indium, all these are paramagnetic material. If we eat this, then what happens means, as temperature increases, its susceptibility goes on decreasing. That is the meaning of this, because it is inversely proportional. And we know that the susceptibility for paramagnetic material is low but positive, whereas for diamagnetic material it is low and negative. Here it is low and positive. So on eating this paramagnetic material, if temperature increases, then this value goes on, susceptibility value goes on decreasing. So positive, it goes on decreasing, it becomes 0 and it may become even negative at one particular temperature. So now this can be also written like this. Susceptibility of paramagnetic material. So the symbol or the notation that is used here, it looks like X, but it is not X. It should be expressed as chi. So chi is the symbol that is used to represent the susceptibility of any magnetic material. So here the susceptibility of the paramagnetic material, it is found that it varies inversely with the temperature. Then it can be written in the mathematical form, that means in the form of law. So what is that law means? It is nothing but, I introduce one constant. I introduce the constant like mu naught into C 1 by T, and this can be written as look here, this can be written as, I write here, susceptibility of paramagnetic, nothing but mu naught into C by T. What is mu naught? Absolute permeability of free space. Free space means air or vacuum. Then what is C called as? C is known as Curie constant. C is equal to known as Curie constant. Okay. So this is nothing but the mathematical form of Curie law. What is the statement of Curie law? Curie law states that the susceptibility of the paramagnetic material is inversely proportional to absolute temperature. So it states that the susceptibility is inversely proportional. So we have written here, so this itself, susceptibility of the paramagnetic material is inversely proportional to temperature. So that itself is the statement. So no need to write this again. So this is nothing but Curie law. Okay. Then coming to the variation of susceptibility with temperature in case of ferromagnetic material. Let us know what happens in case of ferromagnetic material. In case of ferromagnetic material, once again, it is found that susceptibility varies inversely with absolute temperature. That means as T increases, susceptibility decreases. See, here C is known as Curie constant. Okay. And this statement, that is the property itself, is nothing but the Curie law. And this is nothing but the mathematical form of Curie law. In case of ferromagnetic material, if you increase T, say for example there is a ferromagnetic material like iron, if you heat this and if you go on increasing the temperature T of this ferromagnetic material, then its susceptibility goes on decreasing. And we know that the susceptibility value for ferromagnetic material is I and positive. I and positive, don't forget. What does it mean? On increasing the temperature, the susceptibility of ferro goes on decreasing up to what? Up to a particular temperature known as Curie temperature. Let us consider one example. The Curie temperature for iron, Tc, I call Tc as Curie temperature. Okay. Suppose for iron, if the Curie temperature is 1043 Kelvin, what does it mean? What does it mean? First of all, Curie temperature means what? It is the temperature at which ferromagnetic material gets converted into paramagnetic material. Suppose if I consider now this ferromagnetic material like iron. Okay, let us say its initial temperature may be around 1000 Kelvin, I assume. I start with 1000 Kelvin. I have heated this up to a temperature of 1000 Kelvin. And it is found that as temperature increases, susceptibility decreases. Now increase the temperature to now 1020 Kelvin. Then susceptibility, initially susceptibility got decreased. For what temperature? 1000 Kelvin. Now, if you increase the temperature to 1020 Kelvin, what happens to susceptibility? Further decreases. I represent simply more decrease by writing too many arrows. If I write arrow downwards, it means that the value is decreasing. It is only for the sake of understanding, to make our self-explanation simple. On increasing the temperature, that means heat it further to a temperature of, let us say, around 1040 Kelvin. So if you heat this to a temperature of 1040 Kelvin, then susceptibility further decreases. Further it will come down. Its positive value slowly goes on decreasing. Now, if you heat this to a temperature of, let us say, 1042 Kelvin. That means I increase this further by 2 Kelvin. Now susceptibility further decreases. We notice still more decrease in the susceptibility. Now, if we increase this temperature to 1043 Kelvin, just 1 Kelvin I am going to increase. Now what happens means, at this temperature, now the ferromagnetic material now gets converted into paramagnetic material. Remember this, at what temperature? At a temperature of 1043. So if you eat this, the temperature of 1043, so at 1043 Kelvin, so ferro becomes paramagnetic material. That is why we say that the temperature at which the ferromagnetic material becomes paramagnetic material is known as Curie temperature. So temperature at which ferromagnetic material becomes paramagnetic material is known as Curie temperature, represented by Tc. C is the subscript. Then what is the Curie temperature now for the iron? So Curie temperature for iron is nothing but Tc, which is equal to 1043 Kelvin. Okay, now let us increase its temperature further. Say for example, I increase this one to 1050 Kelvin, that means I increase by 7 more Kelvin. Then what happens to the susceptibility? Look the change now. Now here what happened means, on increasing the temperature further, it is found that now susceptibility varies not inversely with absolute temperature. Susceptibility varies inversely with excess of temperature. Excess of temperature means T minus Tc. So what is the temperature to which I heated? So the temperature initially 1000, 1020, 1040, 1042, 1043. I heated this to a temperature 1043. At this temperature, ferro became para. That's why I call this temperature as Curie temperature. Let us go beyond this. Now I increase this one to 1050 Kelvin. How does the susceptibility varies? Means it varies inversely with excess of temperature. That means now your susceptibility is inversely proportional to excess of temperature, means T minus Tc. What is T? 1050. What is Tc? 1043. 1050 minus 1043. So 1050 minus 1043 means, this means susceptibility varies inversely with, what is the difference? 7 Kelvin only. Whereas up to here, susceptibility used to vary with this temperature. Look here, susceptibility varies with the temperature inversely 1000 Kelvin. Susceptibility varies inversely with what temperature? 1020 Kelvin. So up to critical temperature it goes like that. Susceptibility always varies with this temperature. Then once we cross the this one critical temperature, or known as Curie temperature, then susceptibility begins to vary only with excess of temperature. Now on heating this further to, let us say, 1060 Kelvin, then how does the susceptibility varies now? Now the susceptibility varies, let us write here, susceptibility in this case varies inversely with excess of temperature. Excess means 1060 minus 1043. So if I subtract 1043 from 1060, excess of temperature is only 17 Kelvin. So this is the change that is going to take place between paramagnetic material and ferromagnetic material, and we call this as Curie-Weiss law. Curie-Weiss law. Then what is the statement of this Curie-Weiss law? Let us write the statement of Curie-Weiss law. So Curie-Weiss law, see, it states that susceptibility of ferromagnetic material varies inversely with excess of temperature above Curie temperature. That means when once the temperature crosses the Curie temperature, susceptibility always varies only with excess. So susceptibility does not varies inversely with 1050 Kelvin. It varies inversely with the difference of this. Difference of this is only 7. Again, susceptibility here does not varies inversely with 1060 Kelvin. It varies with the difference of these two, this and this difference. It is only 17 Kelvin. That's the meaning of this. So varies inversely with excess of temperature. That is, susceptibility is inversely proportional to T minus Tc. So this is the statement of the Curie-Weiss law. Whereas in case of paramagnetic material, we state Curie law. What is the Curie law? Susceptibility is inversely proportional to absolute temperature. This is Curie law and this is Curie-Weiss law. So this is the difference between these two laws. Now let us study the electrostatic analog of magnetostatics. What is meant by analog? Analog means comparison with one another. What is that I am comparing here now? I am comparing some electric or electricity terms with the magnetism terms. Magnetostatics means related to magnetism. Electrostatics means related to electric charges or electricity. Now, first of all, let us know what is meant by the electric dipole. Two equal and opposite electric dipole. Two equal and opposite charges separated by very small distance. What is the distance? 2a. Plus q and minus q. If this is of 5 coulomb, this should be a 5 coulomb. Only thing is nature should be opposite. So if two equal and opposite charges are separated by small distance, then we call that as electric dipole. Now a line joining the two charges is known as dipole axis, and we also call this as axial line. So what is this line called as? Axial line. A line joining the two charges which can be extended to any length, either this side or this side, is known as axial line. Similarly, a line drawn perpendicular to axial line exactly passing through the center. Suppose if this is the axial line, then if this is the perpendicular drawn to this axial line, why I call this as perpendicular? Because the angle made by this line with this axis or with this axial line is 90 degree. So now this line is known as equatorial line. Equatorial line of electric dipole, and this is known as axial line of electric dipole. Now for a short dipole, what is meant by short dipole? See, if the distance, that is A, what is A? A is the distance between one of the charge and the center of the dipole. If A is very, very small compared to this R, then we call that as short dipole. So for short dipole, A will be very, very less when compared to R. For short electric dipole on the axial line at the point P, what is the electric field means? E axis equal to 1 over 4 pi epsilon 2p by r cube. What is P? P is nothing but Q into 2a, which is nothing but dipole moment. Dipole moment. Which dipole moment? Electric dipole moment. Okay. If this distance half of this is A plus A equal to totally 2a. So if A is very, very small compared to the distance at which we are finding the electric field, then we consider this dipole as a short dipole. For a short dipole on the axial line at some point P, which is at a distance r from the center of the dipole, this is the expression for electric field. Similarly, on the equatorial line at a distance r from the center of the dipole, what is the electric field equation means E equatorial equal to 1 over 4 pi epsilon P by R cube. Now what I do means, I compare this electric field equation with the magnetic field equation, and we show that these two equations are identical to each other. That means they resemble each other, and that comparison with one another itself is known as analog. See, we know that whenever we pass the current through a conductor, then in the region around the conductor what is produced? Magnetic field. That means by using current we are able to produce magnetic field. Vice versa is also possible. That means by using magnetic field we are able to generate electricity. See, that is what we do in case of electric generator. In electric generator, using magnetic field we produce the current. So therefore, here we know that electricity and magnetism are always related to each other. So electricity concepts and magnetism concepts can be related to each other. So here the same thing I am doing here. So I am comparing the electric field equations with the magnetic field equations. See, this is nothing but a bar magnet. Okay. Now at a point P on the axial line, once again this is nothing but axial line of a magnet. Axial line, and this is nothing but equatorial line. So this is nothing but equatorial line. Now on the axial line or the equatorial line, what is the magnetic field for a short magnetic dipole? Here once again, what is a magnetic dipole? Here we said that electric dipole is nothing but two equal and opposite charges separated by very small distance. Similarly, magnetic dipole means it is nothing but a magnet with the two poles north and south separated by very small distance. What is the distance? 2L, which is known as magnetic length, and this is nothing but 2A dipole length. Okay. So short magnetic dipole means if L is very small, from here to here the distance is L, again from here to here the distance is L, L plus L is 2L. So if L is very small compared to the distance of observation, that means P is the point of observation at which magnetic field is required. So if L is very small compared to X, then the magnet is called short magnet. We call that as short magnet. Okay. So now what is the equation for the magnetic field at a point P on the equatorial line of this magnetic dipole? And what is the equation? That can be obtained by simply replacing the electric dipole moment by magnetic dipole moment. That means I replace P by magnetic dipole moment. What is magnetic dipole moment? Magnetic dipole moment is given by, so it is given by M into 2L, M into 2L. So what is M means? M is nothing but pole strength of each magnet. Pole strength means the force of attraction or repulsion exerted by the pole of one magnet on the pole of another magnet. If this pole on this pole exerts what amount of repulsive force, or if this pole exerts what amount of attractive force on this pole, that is nothing but the pole strength. So pole strength, and this is nothing but magnetic length. So replace electric dipole moment by magnetic dipole moment. So this is one thing in which I am going to do, magnetic dipole moment. Then secondly, what I do means I replace now here this one X by R. That means I replace R by X. Let us write the replacements. Okay, replacements. Then what else we can replace? We can replace E axial by magnetic field on the axial line, and E equatorial, that means electric field on the equatorial line, by magnetic field on the equatorial line. Okay. Then what is that? We can replace. We have replaced almost all, but we have to replace one constant. That means 1 over 4 pi epsilon naught. I am going to replace this constant 1 over 4 pi epsilon naught by mu naught over 4 pi. So if I replace all this in this equation, then what do we get? Let us write. In place of E axial, I write B axial, which is equal to, in place of this whole constant 1 over 4 pi epsilon naught, I write this as equal to mu naught over 4 pi. Then 2 constant, in place of P, I write magnetic dipole moment M, divided by R cube. In place of R, I replace R by X, therefore it becomes X cube. Similarly, let us write for this equation. E equatorial, now it is replaced by B equatorial. Look here, E equatorial is replaced by B equatorial, which is equal to, once again, 1 over 4 pi epsilon naught constant is replaced by mu naught over 4 pi. Then P is there, electric dipole moment, which is replaced by magnetic dipole moment. So M. Then once again, R is replaced by X. So therefore we get X cube. So these are the magnetic field equation for a short magnetic dipole. Okay, if L is very much less than X, then the magnet is called short magnet, or that magnet dipole is called as short magnetic dipole. So these two equations almost resembles these two equations. Only thing is the electric terms are replaced by magnetic terms. So that is why we say this as analog. We can compare electric field equation of a short electric dipole with the magnetic field equation of a short magnetic dipole. Similarly, so the equatorial line equation can be compared with equatorial line equation of magnetic field. So this is nothing but electrostatic analog. So with this, we have completed this chapter, that is magnetism and matter. So in the next class, we shall study about the new chapter, that is nothing but electromagnetic induction. Thank you.